going to win the game.
Somebody wins, somebody loses.
This is why you hired me.
Welcome, Karma Nation. Week 3 is in the books. Wow. We had a great week 3. It was a tough week 3. And if you followed our week 3 Sportfolio picks, you know we went into this week really holding our nose, putting money down on Luke Falk, putting money down on Mason Rudolph, putting money down on Kyle Allen. Man, it was tough, but cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And in fact, in both our Super Contest picks and our Circa picks, we are undefeated as of now. So let's get into performance. So first and foremost, let's talk about our Sportfolio picks, the picks that you are following. And hopefully you are following them, because if you are, you're making money right along with us. We've had strong performance over the course of both week 1 and week 2. So actually, season to date, core is up 5.7%. Aggressive is up 17.6%. And then multi-sport total return is up 18.5%. And that's just going into week 3. So week 3's picks in core was Steelers +7, cha-ching. Panthers +3, easy. Bengals +7, not so easy, but we got it. Jets +21.5. That was definitely not easy. Very tough, but when you get that many points, it's just tough, especially division game. The value's on the Jets. We took it. It cashed. And then Rams -2.5. Another tough game. Probably could have went either way. Rams was the right side, though. Granted, not the sharpest of picks, I would say. But nonetheless, 5-0 in core. So we were 5-0 in week 1, 5-0 in week 3, 3-2 in week 2. So just crushing it across the board. I mean, the betting gods are fickle, so we don't want to belabor the point too much, because week 4 can be super tough, but very strong out of the gate. So now let's talk about our Circa picks. So the top 5 consensus Circa picks were Lions, which cashed, Ravens, which cashed, Rams, which cashed, Texans, which cashed, and Steelers, which cashed. So actually, Circa consensus top 5 picks actually went 5-0. So for us to keep up with kind of the benchmark, we would have to go 5-0 as well. And fortunately for us, we did go 5-0. So we had Ravens +6.5, Jets +22, Texans +3.5, Steelers +6.5, and Rams -3, sweeping the board 5-0. And what, Zach? We're half a point from first as of now?
Half a point from first is right. And
Beautiful.
Because we are half a point from first, Derek Stevens of Circa has offered us a free room at the D Las Vegas next weekend to watch the games and see if we can win this first quarter prize of over $125,000. And being only a half game out of first place, we're in good position. Now, been here before, not in this contest specifically, but we're in position, which is always good, which is always nice. But I don't think we want to change up too much too soon or get too cute. I think we're going to stick with what's working and work to aim to go 4-1 or 5-0 and give us a real shot at potentially taking home this quarterly prize in the Circa.
Yeah, it would be beautiful if we could. So how did we do in Super Contest, Zach?
Super Contest, we actually did very well. We still have one game on the slate, but we are currently 4-0. We did Bengals +6, Jets +22.5, Panthers +3, Steelers +6.5, and then we have Redskins +4 Monday night, which we're probably on the fence with, not loving that pick, but have the home underdog, so things could be worse. And as we've seen throughout this weekend, one of the major points of emphasis starting off the week was these lines on these underdogs were egregiously bad when they opened. Jets 22.5 really should have opened probably 17.5. Panthers went to +3 once Allen became the quarterback. I mean, an injured Cam Newton is worse than a healthy Kyle Allen, yet the line moved 4 to 5 points in the opposite direction. And that's just an example of how terrible these lines were to open the week, which is why this week felt so good of, man, we could almost like not take a favorite, even though we like the Vikings, we lean the Rams, but for the most part, that's why we had to take the Jets. We're just like, man, these lines are just so crazily egregious that, we got some good fortune, but that's why it's important to, if you like a side enough, you lean it. If you're getting good line value, the line's wrong, that's when you want to hit it. So.
Yeah, and this is really along the lines of the motto that, a lot of traditional bettors might have heard of before is, betting numbers and not betting teams. I mean, when we're betting the Jets plus 22, I mean, we're not really betting that Luke Falk is going to command the Jets offense into some sort of, superior performance on the road versus arguably the best team in the league, arguably one of the best teams the league has seen in the last few years. But we're betting that number. We're betting more than 3 touchdowns. Now, the Jets didn't put in a good performance. In fact, they put in a pathetic performance. So, like, Luke Falk threw an interception that was hideous. He threw for less than 100 yards. Le'Veon Bell had less than 40 yards rushing, I believe. Just the offense was completely ineptitude. The thing is when you're getting so many points, this is an NFL football game. Things can happen. Muffed punts can happen. Pick sixes can happen. And exactly those things did happen in this game, which ultimately allowed us to cover. Now, you could say those things were lucky, but the thing is and they were, because the Jets looked terrible. They were down 30-0, and if the Patriots were really putting their foot down on the pedal, then this could have easily been more than that. Luckily, during the pick six, that was the one drive that Belichick took Brady out, put in the rookie Jarrett Stidham. He threw a pick six, ultimately allowed us to cover this game. But those are the things that can happen in NFL games. And when you take a plus 22 number, you give yourself flexibility for those types of things to happen. So the same thing with Steelers. Again, getting that plus 6.5, that plus 7. Mason Rudolph coming in for Big Ben. For us, we didn't think it was that big of a downgrade. We had this game around plus 4.5, plus 5. Certainly not at plus 6.5, plus 7. So we thought we were getting at least 2-3 points of value, which that is extremely juicy.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so do you want to go down the slate real quick just to see, kind of recap? I know we just touched on Jets, Patriots. I don't think we need to go too much deeper into that game. I think we know the situation there. But is there any good takeaways to pull away from either the Jets or the Patriots?
I would say that, the Tom Brady looked, a little off. There seemed to be a little bit of chemistry issues still. I mean, again, there was probably not a lot of this was a very vanilla game plan, I presume, which was kind of like part of our handicap as well. I was actually surprised that Belichick was as aggressive as they were. I'm surprised Brady was in there as long as he was. I'm surprised that they were passing for as long as they were out of the shotgun. I mean, there was a lot of things. Like, they kept Josh Gordon in, they kept Edelman in. And in fact, Josh Gordon and Edelman both got hurt in this game. Gordon ultimately did come back, but he sprained one of his fingers, and then Edelman got hurt and didn't return. Why do you have these players in when you're up 20-0, 23-0, 30-0? The game is over. So I'm shocked that the Patriots played as aggressive as they did. But I would definitely, I don't upgrade or downgrade the Patriots. I definitely do downgrade the Jets. This team looks absolutely miserable. They cannot move the ball whatsoever. They're just totally plagued with injuries. I mean, I haven't looked at next week's games, but I mean, we bet the Jets 2 weeks in a row now. And I don't think I have the stomach to bet them probably again this season. But yeah, we can like get into kind of a recap of what happened across the board in week 3. So I watched most of the games. I was a little bit out and about today, and I know you were too as well, Zach. So I don't think we're going to have too many deep thoughts on a lot of the games this week. Again, as we usually do, throughout the week, we're going to like look at the NFL replay, going to watch every single game, to help us, handicap next week's games. But as of right now, we can just keep it at a high level.
Well,
so we can start with yeah, go on.
I was going to say, on that note, I think the 2 themes of the week actually played out exactly the way we said. One, that the underdog lines were egregiously overweighted to the favorite. And the other part of our theme was unproven, so to speak, quarterbacks leading teams for the first time or second time in a game that they were a heavy underdog. And those quarterbacks, by and large, were inconsistent at times, but played really well. And I think this speaks to something that the quarterback landscape is evolving and changing right before our very eyes, and I don't think the market is aware of that. The assumption is everyone's the next Nathan Peterman. The assumption is not who's the next Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger. And I think it's not to say Daniel Jones or Kyle Allen is any of those things, but these quarterbacks are in college throwing the ball more in more sophisticated systems. Kyle Allen was on the bench all last year. Like, they're gaining confidence. They're smarter. They're more proficient. Like, they get it, right? Like, more of them get it. And so I think there's an uptick in quarterback play, and there's no real tape on them. So you don't know his tendencies like you know Eli's tendencies. That's how Daniel Jones runs for 2 touchdowns. Is you forget, like, oh wait, that's not Eli Manning. Like, this guy's athletic, Daniel Jones. So it's just 2 macro takeaways are: don't underestimate quarterbacks just because you don't know who they are. Remember, Josh Johnson last year took the Redskins on the road and beat the Jaguars. He hadn't played in the NFL for, 5-6 years? So, these are still NFL caliber players. Look into their tape, see where the advantage is, and if the market's overly down on them for no real good reason, again, Cam is hurt. He's playing hurt. He can't run. What is Cam Newton without his legs? Kyle Allen can throw. It's an upgrade. But yet the market said it's 5 points of a downgrade.
Downgrade. Yes. Yeah,
that's insane. And that's why we didn't even debate Carolina the whole week. We're just put him in Super Contest. I didn't even realize we didn't put him in Circa. That's how much we didn't even think about it. Because we're just oh yeah, that's an easy pick. It's got to be Carolina.
Yeah, and in fact, in aggressive, we have, and even in conservative, we had Panthers money line in our plays. In fact, we had a great two-game underdog money line parlay and conservative hit that really boosted performance, which was a Panthers Lions underdog money line parlay. It was very nice. So that boosted that performance. But in addition to your point, Zach, we bet Kyle Allen. We bet Mason Rudolph. We bet Luke Falk. All 3 of those ended up covering their games. But in fact, in addition to those 3, we didn't bet Daniel Jones, and he covered. We didn't bet Teddy Bridgewater, and he covered. In fact, both those quarterbacks won outright. So further to your point, a lot of these new quarterbacks playing kind of starting their first games here, or one of their, one of their second games is, just you really want to take advantage of the line, not, overcompensating for some sort of negative play, when in fact that's really not the case when you dig into the fundamentals.
And I got to look at this. I'd love to pull this up next week. I'm pretty sure new unexpected starting quarterbacks against the spread are 10-0 right now. If you include Brissett starting week 1, Gardner Minshew, and now you pick up on Daniel Jones and all these guys. This is 10-0. At what point is this trend not a trend? Something special, So just something to pay attention.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about them too. So let's dive into Bills Bengals. So we had the Bengals. We had the Bengals in the Super Contest, right?
We did. I think
and then we had Bengals in core as well, and also in aggressive. So this one was definitely a sweater. Bengals, were down 14 zip. I was texting you, Zach, like, man, this was a terrible pick. Probably like the worst one. It was like worse than Jets. Like Andy Dalton was like 0 for 4. Like couldn't do anything. I think even like deep into the third quarter, his quarterback rating was like 34.4. Just totally inept. Luckily, Josh Allen threw a pick, gave the Bengals a short field. They cashed it into a touchdown. And then I think the Bengals basically put together like one decently good drive, scored another touchdown, tied it up 14-14. I didn't see really anything else after that. It seemed like the Bengals somehow got a field goal, took the lead 17-14. And at that point in time, then I was, I stopped sweating like, oh, whew, like it looks like, we're going to be in good shape. Bills obviously came back, scored another touchdown, won the game 21-17, but Bengals plus 6.5. And also we bought them up to +7 in the Sportfolios. Those cashed.
Yeah. And one point on that is I feel like want to make sure that you don't want to leverage into a favorite if it's the wrong side. Like, so the Bengals wasn't the right side, but neither was the Bills, because the fundamentals of this game was that the Bills were not going to put up 30 points like they did against the Giants in this game, because they were missing Singletary, and Bengals were going to rebound from their terrible tackling performance against the 49ers, giving up like 7-8 yards a carry. So this game was Bengals or no play. And yeah, Bills could have pulled away, but they're not that type of team or offense, and not in a motivated spot for the Bengals. And so it's just kind of like a reminder of why we ended up putting the Bengals, not because we were like so confident in the Bengals, but it's also we would only consider the Bengals in that spot. Like the Bills was never really a consideration. And that's kind of a key point, is there's certain situations in games, especially on certain favorites with big lines, that sometimes you can't even consider them because the situation isn't right to lay that many points.
Well, yeah, and exactly right. And so again, sometimes these lines, they overreact to just the most recent experience. So again, you look like, did the Bengals play terrible last weekend versus the 49ers? Yes, they looked like a college football team. I mean, they could not tackle. They were at home, got blown out by 30. But the week prior to that, they almost beat Seattle in Seattle. And people were actually up on the Bengals. And the Bengals versus the 49ers, they closed as favorites. Because again, the market is now buying into the Bengals. Oh, Andy Dalton. Ooh, John Ross has come around. Ooh, Tyler Boyd. Ooh, Mixon. And they're at home. And man, the Niners, like, they got lucky versus the Bucks. And now the Niners crushed the Bengals. Oh, well, now the Bengals suck. Now they're going on the road versus the Bills.
Well,
now they should be a touchdown underdog.
So
and again, it's that overreaction.
Well, then look at the accumulation, that scenario that you just gave. Then look at the overreaction into the third week. So it's like it's escalated exponentially. So week one, the Vegas market doesn't know what the hell's going on. Neither does the public. Week two is a little bit of an overreaction. Then week three is an overreaction to the overreaction. That's why we cleaned up on week three, if you think about it.
Yeah. So moving on, Cowboys-Dolphins. Cowboys win 31-6. In fact, the Dolphins, so the Cowboys actually get the cover in the back door here. I would say actually back door, because Dolphins were covering a lot of this game. It looked like actually Dolphins were playing a little bit of competitive ball. I would say with Josh Rosen, they definitely looked better. It was actually 10-6. And it looked like I was watching a little bit of this game. Josh Rosen threw a great pass to Preston Williams into the end zone. And Preston Williams has a touchdown for about 3/4 of the way. And at the very last second, after a step or two, the ball just kind of floats, kind of just dribbles out of his hands. And so they wave it off, no touchdown. They kick the field goal. It's 10-6. But if he catches that touchdown, it's 10-10. Almost going into halftime. And, Dallas certainly sweating it. But they don't get the touchdown, and then Dallas makes some adjustments. And in the second half, Dolphins just can't really get anything going. Josh Rosen throws an interception, and then Dallas starts to move forward, and then Dallas scored a last-second touchdown with maybe like 2 minutes left, and ultimately gets them the cover. I would just say the Dolphins don't look as miserable as they did the first 2 weeks. So again, the Dolphins are now 0-3 against the spread, 0-3 overall. But I would say there was a little bit of heart to them in this game.
Well, you can't bottom out any further than bottom, So I imagine a slight uptick here and there is inevitable, as I think we would all agree.
Yeah, and I don't downgrade the Cowboys or anything after this. I definitely do modestly upgrade the Dolphins, but I don't downgrade the Cowboys because I imagine they came into this game, again, like the Patriots, with a vanilla playbook, with the expectation that, they're going to win the game. They don't want to reveal a lot, just try to get out without any injuries. And, just kind of going through the motions. And then I think maybe they got a little scared there when it was almost 10-10. And then, made those adjustments at halftime. And then even with a vanilla playbook, they have the talent to really just get down the field. And then again, still, essentially crushed them 31-6.
Yeah.
So moving on, so we can go to Packers-Broncos. Packers win in Lambeau, 27-16. The line closed Broncos +7, +7.5 in that range. And in fact, we flirted a little bit with Broncos +7. I would say I liked it the most. I kind of kept complaining to you. I'm like, dude, we're not talking about Broncos Packers like this game at all, like when we were doing our preparation throughout the week. And you just didn't seem interested in this game really at all. I know you were down on the Broncos at the beginning of the season. And I mean, I didn't love it, but I definitely leaned Broncos for sure.
Yeah, I think it was one of those plays of I thought this was one of the few lines that was right. And Packers laying 7.5 just didn't feel good. But neither did the Broncos on the road in this spot, because then you're saying it's going to be a competitive game from start to finish. And at this point, like I said, my macro theme on the Broncos is they're a team that you fade early in the season, you bet later in the season. And I think they've proven that through 3 weeks. But I think you'll probably see them start getting a little more consistent, a little stronger, now that the coaching staffs are starting to understand their players and their strengths and their weaknesses. And so, yeah, for this game, it was just, to me, like, it's a game where I thought there's no edge. So why am I considering it? At least like the Jets, I know I'm getting 6 points of where this line should be. At least with the Steelers, I'm getting 3 points. Like, I'm getting something. In this game, it was just a game that I'm like, there's nothing there. Like, I don't see anything that I can pick off.
Yeah, and glad that we actually did stay off it, because Packers get the cover. They win by 11. And in fact, kind of, again, going to your kind of preseason core thesis on the Broncos was that you thought they were going to start off slow, that, it was going to take some time to adjust to the new coach and Vic Fangio. It was going to take some time for Flacco to get adjusted and develop chemistry with his wide receivers and this offense. So it's possible now that the Broncos, are 0-3. They played competitive ball. They're not getting crushed by any of these teams. They probably, they should have lost to the Bears, but then should have won. But I think there could be some value on the Broncos moving forward. I don't know who they play next week. We'll get that into the later in the podcast. But if the Broncos are playing at home and they're an underdog, I like that role.
Yeah.
So moving on, Colts-Falcons. Colts get the win at home, 27-24. They also get the cover. We had the Colts -1 in our aggressive Sportfolio. That cashed. I really liked the Colts going into this week. And again, it was right on the cusp of getting into both our Super Contest and our Circa picks. Again, that's one of the reasons why we actually did put it into the aggressive, because we have that flexibility to have more than 5 picks. We ultimately didn't put it in. I loved it, but Circa was like that -1.5. I know you were uneasy about it, and I did agree a little bit. I thought this game could come down to the wire, and who knows, maybe it actually does come down to that 1 point. But the public was pounding the Falcons. I think this game closed with 80% of the tickets on Falcons, and this line never really moved, even with 80% of the support. So it definitely seemed like sharps were on the Colts. I was on the Colts. You leaned Colts, but you didn't allow us to pull the trigger. Yeah. Any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so it's kind of the same thing. So week to week, especially with the Super Contest and Circa picks, when I look at the slate, I look at games across other games, right? So I'm comparing this game to other games. And just like the Packers game, this was one of the games that I was like, man, this line feels right. So when there's 10 games that I'm like, these lines are all wrong. They're just wrong. They're completely market bias based. This line, I was like, it's just about right. I think this game could go either way if the Falcons play decently. And I think the Falcons actually probably played a little bit like week 1 overall. I have to rewatch the tape. But, it just wasn't a game that I saw the value, though I recognize the Sharps were on the Colts, so it was kind of a Colts or bust play for the most part.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And the thing is, again, a lot of people are still down on Jacoby Brissett, which they definitely shouldn't be. The Colts are playing very strong ball. Brissett had started several games already in the past. He looked good with the Patriots. He looked good with the Colts. He definitely seems to be maturing and is really like a legitimate NFL starter. In fact, of course, like Matt Ryan gets way more praise than Jacoby Brissett does, and Matt Ryan has a much stronger reputation. But you look at the stats of this game, Matt Ryan, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Brissett, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Matt Ryan threw a pick. Brissett, no picks. So they're statistically, they're playing in line with one another. Brissett's actually making less mistakes. I know actually Brissett started this game like 9 for 9 for like 100 yards and a touchdown. So he had a very hot start. I think the Colts started off the game 10-zip. So really, putting the pressure on the Falcons. And, kind of as we know, when the pressure gets on the Falcons, yeah, maybe they might make a game of it, but they're not closers.
No. Well, it's Matt Ryan.
So
we saw this in the Super Bowl, and we'll finish with that.
Yeah. So moving on, Chiefs-Ravens. Chiefs at home win the game 33-28. The line in the Super Contest and in Circa was +6.5 Ravens. The line actually closed -5, wiggled around 5.5, and that's exactly where this game ends. So if you were an early bettor on the Ravens, you cashed the ticket like we did. And we really waffled with this game because
I hated it.
If you read, if you read our preseason futures article, we're very down on the Ravens. We're very down on Lamar Jackson, on his ultimate potency over the course of the season. We heavily bet the Ravens under 8.5 games. And over the courses of week 1 and 2, when the Ravens and Lamar Jackson play arguably maybe 2 of the bottom 3 worst teams, they carve them up. And they start off 2-0, and we got everyone, boasting in our faces like how wrong we are about Lamar Jackson and how wrong we are about the Ravens. And now finally they play somewhat of a decent team. In fact, still one of the worst defenses in the NFL, but nonetheless have a lot of problems. They were down 30-13. They kind of get a backdoor cover for us, so we cash the tickets. But my mind remains the same on the Ravens and Lamar Jackson's trajectory over the course of the season.
Yeah, this was a pick I did not want to make. I was uncomfortable with it all week. And again, a lot of it has to do with the rest of the games on the slate. It's not just this game in this instant. And the reason why was because, they were down 30-13. They're on the road, and Lamar Jackson is who we thought he was. So take away the Cardinals game. What did Kyle Allen do to them? Oh, he crushed them. Take away the Dolphins game. Who hasn't crushed the Dolphins this year? 16 out of 16 teams will crush the Dolphins. Lamar Jackson threw for what? Less than 50% against the Chiefs defense in a prevent defense? Come on. This guy, my best friend, God bless him. Last week, we went to go see a movie, and he goes, oh man, I think Lamar Jackson's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes. I burst out laughing because there's not a chance in hell. That was like, oh man, Ryan Leaf could be the next Peyton Manning. Now, Lamar Jackson's not going to be Ryan Leaf. But how dare you compare anyone to Peyton Manning? It's not even, the fact that you would even make that, conclusion off last year's sample size and 2 games, when Patrick Mahomes is throwing 50 touchdowns like it's drinking water.
Mm-hmm. No, going into this game, having these ridiculous parallels to oh, Jackson and Mahomes is the next like Manning versus Brady rivalry. I mean, it's asinine. I mean, granted, I was talking to you during our midweek preparations, and ultimately we leaned into this game and put Ravens plus 6.5 into Circa. And the main reason was I agree Jackson looks better than I expected him to look, but he still doesn't look good enough to where this team is going to win 9 games. So even with a less potent Steelers and certainly not the greatest Bengals team, I think nonetheless they still will not succeed and win 9 games and get into the playoffs. I think this game was a demonstration of kind of the things to come with Lamar Jackson and this Ravens team. That basically they're just going to be average, middle of the road to slightly down if they're not playing some of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, and they'll get to play some more of the worst teams in the league, and the Bengals and maybe the Steelers later. So, this team could surpass some expectations, but by all means, let the market soak up the Lamar Jackson bandwagon and let me fade it all year.
Yep.
So.
Moving on, Vikings, Raiders. So Vikings in Minnesota win the game 34-14. The line opened. Vikings minus 7.5 moved up to -9. Vikings cover all opening and closing lines. Easy, no problem. In fact, this game wasn't even as close as the final score indicates. This was just pure domination by the Vikings. We really leaned on the Vikings. We had Vikings in a couple of our Sportfolios, wrapped into some teasers and some parlays. We ultimately didn't put them into Circa or Super Contest because we thought that, so the line in Circa was, I think, 9. It was 8.5 in Super Contest. And we had this line right at like that 7.5. So it was kind of like targeted right at that opening line. Now, maybe 7.5, 8.5, 9, it's not that big of a deal. And, we thought that those were some dead numbers anyway. So it was very close to getting in. We ultimately didn't. And I feel like we definitely should have, because it would have been much easier than some of the games that we ultimately put in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard because we do our Super Contest picks late Friday night. We do our Circa picks the next day. And generally, Circa's lines are a little different by and large, a game here or there, half point here or there. So if it was reversed, if we did Circa first and then Super Contest, I think we would have done Vikings in our second round of picks at the 8.5. But because we were losing a half point, we've already gotten burned twice in the Super
with a half point.
Yeah, we'd be in first place in the Circa right now if it wasn't for 2 half points. So goes to show a half point.
Every point is valuable.
So this time next week, when we recap, if we're a half point or even a point away from winning 120K, just know half points matter.
Yeah, and in fact, another position that we cashed, actually, again, if you're a subscriber to Discord, which I hope that you are, and if you aren't, definitely get involved, because we post live plays in Discord. Again, we do live betting, dynamic hedging, and so one of the positions that we posted in there, again, Sunday morning, was Kirk Cousins prop under 28.5 passes, closes the game, 21 pass attempts. So that was another easy cash, another plus 1% for our aggressive Sportfolio.
Well, an interesting thing, real quick on those props, is if you look through the slate Sunday morning, what I'm noticing is, you have, let's say, 10 props on a team per game. So you have 12 NFL games. Well, some of their props line are off. So like Mike Evans was plus 168 to go over, I think, 75 yards. Well, he had 200 yards receiving. Now, it's not to say, you knew that was going to happen. But at plus 168, is Mike Evans going to have his first breakout game of the season? He's finally healthy. He's not sick anymore. He's playing the Giants
versus a terrible defense.
At home. At home, right? So, and Jameis Winston.
With 10 days rest.
And Jameis Winston loves Mike Evans. Like, there's no receiver he would love to get more involved than him. So, at that kind of price point, like, hell yeah, give me Mike Evans. Now, granted, some of their props are overly weighted the other way, but if you can pick off some plays you like, especially if you do DFS, you should already be, head and shoulders above the market price. So
Indeed.
just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and that's why the DFS Karma crew too. I mean, they've been immensely helpful with a lot of their articles and research to really helping us actually put together some of these really plus EV props for our aggressive portfolios. So moving on, Patriots, Jets. Patriots win 30-14. We kind of like covered this game.
Yeah.
It was such a miserable game. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. We cashed the ticket. It's done. Probably never betting the Jets again for the rest of the season.
Dear God.
Eagles, Lions. Eagles in Philadelphia. There's a lot of sharp action.
What happened in this game?
Yeah, a lot of sharp action coming in on the Lions. Opened the week around like that +6 range. Ended up closing +4. I mean, granted, I think the whole market knew the Eagles were dealing with a lot of injuries. Alshon Jeffrey was out. Deshaun Jackson was out. A tackle was out. 2 defensive linemen were out. So just totally spread thin across both offense and defense. And then, of course, Carson Wentz is still kind of he just doesn't look 100% healthy still. And then take a kind of hobbled, still kind of just gathering his footing Carson Wentz and give him much less weapons than was expected. And you're going to get some of these wobbly performances. And basically, the Eagles were losing this game pretty much from start to finish. Yeah. There was kind of some crazy wildness in the end. Again, the Lions, in Lions fashion and in Matt Patricia fashion, tried to throw this game away in the end. And again, the Eagles just didn't have the weapons to really close the game out. But this was certainly all Lions. Lions +6 was certainly the right side.
Yeah.
And we were close to putting it in. But again, like as we've talked about on previous podcasts, we just really don't like Matt Patricia. And when it came down to Matt Patricia versus Doug Peterson in Philadelphia, Matt Stafford versus Carson Wentz, even with kind of a less than healthy Eagles team, we just couldn't pull the trigger on the Lions, even though we could see some of that sharp action on the Lions.
Yeah, and I think in a different week, we probably actually would have done the Lions because, normally you don't get a slate where we're 7-0. In our Circa Super Contest picks. Last year in Super Contest, we never went 5-0. So this shows you how good of a week it was because of the line misplacement. So I think we definitely would have done the Lions in a different week. This week felt very square sharp, almost too obvious. But sometimes things are too obvious. And again, sometimes the books make a bad line. And this was one of them. It was one of those lines that you second guess yourself because you're like, man, how is this line this bad? Like with all those injuries, like you think it'd be like 3 or 2, and it wasn't. So, it just goes to show that sometimes you just want to make sure you're weighing the appropriate variables the right way. Otherwise, you may second guess yourself out of something that seems and appears, well, that was easy, that makes sense, rather than holding your nose, hoping Andy Dalton throws a completion.
Yeah. And in fact, I mean, we cashed Lions last week, +2.5 at home versus Chargers. Again, I think, our adjusted final score for that game would have had the Chargers winning that game by about 10 points. So again, we feel like we kind of got a little bit lucky cashing that Lions ticket in our Sportfolios and in Circa. And, I think we just didn't feel comfortable maybe going to that well again this week.
Yeah, that's fair.
So moving on, Cardinals, Panthers. Panthers get the road win.
It's been our play of the year.
Yeah, 38-20. Again, the Cardinals put together a decent performance. They started off 7-zip, then the Panthers came back, took the lead, and then the Cardinals came back and then took a 17-10 lead. But I mean, it just comes down to it that Kyle Allen is an upgrade to Cam Newton. Not necessarily that Kyle Allen is a better quarterback versus a healthy and 25-year-old Cam Newton. But, Cam Newton, he's got foot injuries. I think he's got psychological injuries. He's not his same self. He has not played well this season. He gets one good throw out, gets one good zip on it, and then the next 3 passes are just lame ducks. and they just have not looked good. But obviously, you got CMC, you got Christian McCaffrey, obviously one of the best running backs in the league. They got some nice young up and coming wide receivers. They have a decent defense. And again, the Cardinals are supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league. And the fact that they actually closed as favorites versus an otherwise, competent football team led by a quarterback that, doesn't have a lot of starting experience, but we saw him play last year. He looked generally competent. And if he was even just going to play a game manager role, I think the Panthers, again, get this outright win and definitely cover the 3. And again, that was expressed in our Sportfolios. We had Panthers money line in our Sportfolios, much less just the +3, which we also had in our Super Contest.
And real quick, I want to touch on Cam Newton because who knows if he's going to come back and how do we, re-gauge the Panthers and the value on them. If Cam Newton can't run, imagine if Josh Allen didn't have feet. If he couldn't run, how good is Josh Allen? What? 30?
Yeah, he loses a lot of his edge.
Loses a lot of his edge. That is, at this point in time, that is Cam Newton right now. If he cannot run, I think he had, 8 yards the first 2 games rushing? If he cannot run, he's Josh Allen if Josh Allen couldn't run. Would you be betting that? Would you be supporting that? Would you think that's a world beater? Absolutely not. And that's why the market was so off. That's why when the line moved 5 points once they announced Kyle Allen as the starter, we just kind of...
It was egregious.
Yeah, it was egregious. It was crazy. The craziest line move I've seen probably in 2 years. So.
And again, I think it's because, people are buying in, to Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray, he looks good. Yeah. I mean, they got some decent weapons. But the thing is, Kyler Murray and this offense, it's very sexy. They put in together a decent performance versus the Ravens. I mean, again, I think it was more a statement on the ineptitude of the Ravens, more so and less so on the potency of the Cardinals. But again, that cover last week, I think, anybody who bet the Cardinals last week, they cashed those tickets. The +13 versus the Ravens was actually, again, we really liked that we had in the aggressive portfolio that cashed. I know we had some internal agreements within DFS Karma with some other analysts and who really loved the Ravens that week. But I think, that was kind of that momentum, especially the Cardinals bettors from last week. Then we're, again, going to the well. Oh, Cardinals are at home. No Cam Newton. -2. Just got to win by a field goal with Kyler Murray and this offense. Give it to me, baby.
No, and they're off. So let's move on to the next game. Texans-Chargers.
Yeah, Texans win on the road outright as 3.5-point underdogs, win the game 27-20. We had Texans +3.5 in Circa.
Nice.
This was a game I was not comfortable putting in. I mean, this was a game that, again, we went back and forth on a lot, mostly because fundamentally we both agreed that Texans was the right side, and that was ultimately the reason that pushed us over the edge and to put it into Circa. But I was not comfortable with the line movement. So Texans was a super public play. 80% of the bets were on the Texans. And this line just didn't really move on that action, suggesting that, there were some sharp bettors on the Chargers side, and the books were reluctant to move this line, even in spite of all the money and all the tickets coming on the Texans. Because basically this line opened 3.5, moved down to 3, but never crossed that 3 level. And usually when that's the case, that sends a strong signal to us that there is some really sharp bettors on the other side that the books respect and aren't willing to move the line. And ultimately, again, I thought Texans fundamentally right side, and it turned out that was the case.
Yeah. And if you're giving me points, I think there's maybe 2 quarterbacks that on any given week, if you're giving me more than 3 points, it's going to be hard for me to say no. And it's Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson. So it's not always, but in the right situation, if it feels like they're getting too many points, like last week, we were on Seattle against the Steelers. These quarterbacks are they're so shifty. They can use their legs. They can make big throws down the field. They're the kind of quarterbacks that you can always maybe get a backdoor cover if worse comes to worse, which it's better to have that on your side than have, Luke Falk in the backfield?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and again, like we love Watson. We love the wide receivers at his disposal. We hate the head coach, Bill O'Brien. We hate the play calling. The offensive line continues to be a liability. But the Chargers also just have a plethora of injuries across both offense and defense. And that was one of the main reasons why we thought, Texans would have a chance of covering this and even winning outright, because we actually had Texans straight up underdog money line in a couple of our parlays in the Sportfolio, in the aggressive Sportfolio. So we definitely strongly leaned that way. Again, a lot of these late afternoon games I didn't see really at all. I was kind of just like monitoring it on my phone, so we can't really go too deep into what we saw throughout the game. But again, one of these games that we'll definitely have to watch more closely during the week.
Yeah, and so next up we got Steelers 49ers. This was
game of the week.
My game of the week, and because
the cover, Mason Rudolph,
it
the
did
cover of our Sportfolio. Well, they not only did they cover, but Mason Rudolph was the cover of our week 3 picks.
Yes, and he came through when it mattered 2 times. I didn't think it was going to happen. I was monitoring the game a little bit, also on my phone. But the 4 turnovers was kind of right where I thought this game would be, that the Steelers defense would play gritty.
And Minkah Fitzpatrick, the newly acquired, got an interception.
Yep, and Garoppolo would turn into normal Garoppolo, which is a little wishy-washy. And that is what happened. One thing I didn't expect to happen was that the Steelers' offense would be maybe the worst in the NFL besides the Jets, for the first 2.5 quarters. And then all of a sudden, Mason Rudolph threw an 80-yard bomb to Juju Smith. So...
yeah, Rudolph, the Steelers had a couple big plays that ultimately got them into the end zone that made this game a little bit closer. Again, this is a game that I'm definitely going to have to watch very closely to really reassess, because, for the first half, even in spite of 4 Niners turnovers, the game was 6-0. So the Steelers just could not capitalize on all the turnovers.
No.
Mason Rudolph closed the game, 14 of 27, 174 yards. 2 touchdowns and an interception. So not super impressive stats. It didn't look like he had a great game. Garoppolo obviously struggled himself. He had a fumble. He had 2 interceptions. But again, I think he's still getting adjusted, regaining his health, gaining chemistry with this new offense. I mean, again, going into the season, if you read our preseason futures article, again, we were reiterating, at least on my side, like, I really loved the 49ers going into the season. Again, I think that they were going to win the NFC West. I had them going 13-3, which seems like super aggressive. But looking at that division now, and again, looking at the Rams, I mean, the Rams look, just beatable for sure. The Seahawks look beatable. And obviously there's the Cardinals. And again, the Niners, 3 wins, obviously they crushed the Bengals. That looked good, but I don't think, you don't put a star on top of your head for that performance. I mean, the Niners look competent, but, we'll see. I don't know, 13-3, it's a little ambitious, but it could be in the cards.
All right, Nostradamus, slow down. Now let's get to Bucs-Giants.
Giants win the game outright.
Boy, Daniel Jones.
6.5 point underdogs win the game 32-31 in Tampa. And
we were right and wrong about this game. So
yeah, we were right and wrong because, I think on Saturday we liked the Giants. And then, on Friday we liked the Giants. And then I think you kind of leaned the Giants pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
I kind of got onto the Bucs a little bit on Saturday after I started to think about it a little bit more.
It was really because the line, in my opinion, it's open, was, this is Eli Manning's Giants. And again, I upgraded Giants off Daniel Jones, and I thought this line should have been closer to 3.5, 4 maybe. But the fact that it was 6.5 was like, oh man, the Giants suck still. Like, as if the Bucs are world beaters, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, and I'll admit, I'm based in New York City, so I hear a ton about Danny Dimes, Danny D, And I'll admit I have some some negative bias towards the Giants and Daniel Jones just because I hear about it all the
It's
time, just
interesting.
in the local
You should have told me
media.
that. I would have been like, oh, okay, well, that's why you're so biased against them.
Yeah, so I mean that's definitely filtering and kind of distorting my objective with the Giants for sure.
Okay.
But again, not a game that I watched very closely. It looked like it was a really fun game to watch. Winston looks like he did play a lot better. Obviously, Mike Evans went off. I know the Giants came back because the Bucks were up 28 to
Yeah.
10 or something like that. And I think I was watching some of the highlights, and actually the Bucks had a chance to win it, and I think their kicker missed a
Yeah.
game-winning field goal.
Like, I think it was a
Um,
35-yard field goal you missed.
yeah, yeah.
Rough.
So again, a game that I'm gonna have to look at more closely, but it definitely looks like with Daniel Jones, the Giants are feeling refreshed. New perspective, a new lease on life. Especially now with this win. I mean, the Giants are only 1-2. I mean, it's week 3.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason why this team can't compete. Especially with one of the best running backs in the game. It looked like Saquon Barkley actually did leave the game. It looked like he tweaked his ankle, so we'll have to monitor to see how serious that is.
Yeah. And then we'll finish up Rams-Browns, then we'll touch on next week. So what did you see from Rams-Browns? Anything?
Yeah, so I watched most of this game, in fact. So we had Rams -3. We didn't feel good about it. Yeah, I think
Very
I feel like we
icky.
kind. Yeah, it was very icky. The public was pounding the Rams. I think they opened up like -1.5,
I think it was the
-2.
public play of the week.
It was definitely the public play of the week. It was the number one pick in Circa. It was the number one pick in Super Contest. So definitely, like we knew it was going to be popular, but when we saw it was the number one pick in Super Contest and Circa, it's just like Jesus. Like,
But then again,
I
I
mean,
mean, last
we're not gonna get.
year, the number one pick in Super Contest, I think, went like 72% on the season. So as far as like the consensus pick at 40, 30, 40% in the Super Contest, generally cashes because there's something misaligned in the line that most of the sharp bettors just kind of put it in their portfolio. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and luckily, we got the cash. Rams win 20-13 in Cleveland. Cleveland drove kind of down late in the game, got into the red zone, came down to fourth down. Baker Mayfield was just under a ton of pressure, and basically anytime Mayfield was under pressure, he didn't get the ball out of his hand almost immediately. He just the whole offense kind of collapsed.
yeah,
But again, the Rams just, I mean, at the end of last season, like they didn't look great. Even though they made it all the way to the Super Bowl, they didn't look great doing it. And then, of course, they definitely didn't look good in the Super Bowl. And now they're 3-0, but
this will
they
be
haven't looked good doing it.
well. This will be good, I think, for the Rams because last year they peaked, right? They peaked at the KC game, and I think KC did too.
Yep.
They peaked on each other,
Yep.
and maybe this is good. They're starting the year a little clunky, a little off kilter. So it'll be interesting to watch how they develop through the season. They'll go through a lull, I'm sure, but the question is when they come out of that lull, do they come out stronger? Because I upgrade the defense this year off of last year, especially if their pieces remain healthy. I know they lost
Mm-hmm.
Sue, but I think their defense as a whole unit will be a little better.
Oh no. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's their defense that's really saving them because Goff is making very poor mistakes, like very poor decisions. And, a couple of times in this game, Goff threw an interception, and then came up to the sidelines, and McVay was just really going into him, basically looking at him like, what the hell are you doing? Like, that's not what you were supposed to do. I think he threw like an interception, like it was like 3rd and 2, you know?
Do you ever get the feeling that McVay is Tom Cruise and Goff is Raymond from that movie? What's that movie called?
Yeah, like Rain Man.
He's like,
Rain
all
Man.
right, this is what you do. When that
Yeah.
happens, you do that, and you make us money. Go.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like Goff's like,
No, yeah,
okay.
it makes total sense. Because, there was like a meme floating around this week as well. Like, I don't know if you saw it, but of Goff just like looking at the defense with like glazed eyes, basically
God.
just waiting for McVay to tell him what the play call should be in his headset. And I think, kind of that meme played itself out in this game as well. I mean, Brandon Cooks also just dropping passes.
Mm.
I mean, one of our main handicaps and why the Rams kind of started to look less and less effective at the end of last season, we thought was in conjunction with the loss of Cooper Kupp. And Cooper Kupp is easily one of the most effective players on this team, and he really saves them a lot of times. He's kind of like their Goff safety blanket, and he just plays just great football, very high IQ football player. And it's very, I think it's going to be very close to watch that if Cooper Kupp misses any games or if he gets injured, that could be this team's Achilles heel.
Yeah, and the numbers support that. There was a number last year at Cooper Kupp's peak that him and Goff had like the best rapport of any QB receiver, like of any QB receiver all season, or like there was some extreme stat that like made Cooper Kupp look like Randy Moss, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
last game actually that we didn't get to is actually Saints Seahawks. We just quickly talk about because actually I didn't watch a lot of this game as well. You know, I was monitoring on my phone. I saw we kind of lean the Seahawks and we kind of lean the Saints, and one of the reasons that kept because the line closed -4, and we took the Seahawks last week +4 on the road versus Steelers, which that cashed. Seahawks won outright. But one of the reasons why we took Seahawks last week was because we said we trust Russell Wilson, and the Seahawks end up just playing close games. Like, they don't lose by a lot, they don't win by a lot. So if you're going to give me 4 points, that seems like positive EV. But at -4, I don't care if you're in Seattle. I don't trust this defense. And again, the Seahawks don't lose by a lot, but they also don't win by a lot.
Not anymore.
So we thought just the -4, it was just too much. And then on the Saints side, obviously with Bridgewater, I mean, we're not huge fans of Bridgewater. We didn't think that he's like you said, he's a game manager. He doesn't really have like super effective running abilities anymore, especially post injury. But the rest of the Saints team, and obviously head coaching, like great head coaching from Peyton, still Michael Thomas, still Evan Kamara, still a decent defense. All those pieces are still in line, and so we just we thought Seahawks we just couldn't pull the trigger on. We didn't think there was any value, so we kept it off. Although we did think the Seahawks were going to win this game.
Yeah, I'm curious to rewatch that one, see kind of where they went wrong, because I think there were some mistakes too. But yeah, their defense, their secondary is maybe one of the worst in football right now. So definitely can't trust them in that respect. Okay.
And we can see this. Like, obviously, they used to have a super dominant home field advantage that if you were going to go into Seattle, it was going to be very difficult to win unless you were a super well coached and very talented team. And again, I think they lost like twice at home last season. Now they've lost again at home with a breezeless Saints. So there's some cracks in the Seahawks team.
Oh, and have you looked at the lines for next week yet, or not?
No, I haven't.
All right, how about I do it this week? I'm gonna go through the spread of the lines that are up. So we've got Philadelphia Eagles. This is Thursday night. We'll touch on it briefly because we probably won't put it in much. Eagles +4.5 at Green Bay Packers.
Wait, Eagles at Green Bay?
Yes.
But you just told me the line.
Oh shit, my bad. Yeah. We won't do that for the rest.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're probably not going to play a Thursday game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's probably just going to be a pass.
Pack at home. I mean, I know Rodgers is still a little clunky with LaFleur, but I mean, at home, and remember, that defense is better than it was last year. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to have to be. Yeah, it's going to be worth monitoring the Eagles' injuries because again, if Wentz can start to get some weapons back, if he has Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey back, which I have no idea if he's going to, I really don't even know the severity of the injury, so we'll have to see that as the week plays out. The thing is going to be on a short week too, so who knows? He might still not have those back. If he doesn't, I mean, I would probably lean Packers, but again, it's probably not going to be a play either way.
Yeah, for sure. And then
next game.
All right, Chargers at.
Do not tell me the line.
I'm not going to tell you the line. Chargers at Dolphins.
Oh my gosh, another Dolphins
game
fan.
of the week.
Why do the Dolphins still play? I don't get it.
Yeah.
I
mean,
so
they're
it's
0-3
in
against
LA.
the spread. No, it's in
LA.
It's in Miami.
In Miami. Okay, so it's, they got to go across country.
A lot of injuries on the Chargers.
Based on I'd say like 18 and a half.
16 and a half.
Okay.
I
mean, I guess I'd still lean Chargers.
I'm interested. I want to watch this Dallas game because, like you said, they were in the game for a while, and if Chargers are banged up, I mean, they are banged up, and it's Phillip Rivers to Keenan Allen every play, man.
No, yeah, you make a good point. And again, after I did watch a little bit of the Dolphins-Cowboys game, the Dolphins do have some life in them now. So yeah, I wouldn't bet against the Dolphins. I mean, I'm not going to take a 17-point road favorite. I don't care who it is anyway. So.
No. So Raiders at Colts.
Raiders at Colts. I would say Colts minus 6.5.
Dead on 6.5 right now.
Nice.
It's the juice is on the 6.5, so it looks like it's moving up.
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of the Raiders injuries as well. I mean, now it's going to be back-to-back road games. I mean, remember, kind of like during our preseason research, the Raiders have like one of the worst travel schedules there is. In fact, I don't think they play another home game until November.
Yeah.
So I think that, again, that's something to keep in mind, especially as the weeks move on and the Raiders continue to play all these back-to-back road games. I think they got to go out to London and play a game in a couple weeks. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when thinking about betting the Raiders. In this game, again, I mean, small lean to the Colts.
This is going to be a juicy one. Chiefs at Lions.
Chiefs at Lions. I'll say Chiefs, especially like the Lions are 2-0-1. Just beat the Eagles on the road. There's going to be a lot. They beat the Chargers. There's going to be some Lions love, I think, even in spite of the Chiefs' pure dominance this season. And again, unlike a lot of people, we looked at the Chiefs' schedule. We thought it was going to be super tough. Their over/under was 10.5 wins. Scared a lot of people off, but we bet the Chiefs over, and it's looking pretty good because Mahomes looks just unstoppable right now. Nonetheless, on the road, I'll say Chiefs minus 4.
6.5.
Wow. I probably still like it.
Yeah,
but, okay, next.
I do. Patriots at Bills.
Patriots at Bills. Ooh, now that's going to be a good game. This is going to be the first real game that the Patriots have played.
Is Edelman really hurt? That's the question. Because if he is,
that is going to be
good. These Bills cornerbacks, because I have Boyd on my fantasy and I follow John Ross for DFS.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they suck.
Shut them down.
They shut them down.
Yeah.
So,
Patriots at Buffalo. I'll say Patriots minus 3.
7.5.
Whew.
That's interesting that you said that.
Yeah,
I know.
I mean,
I know
7.5 on the road, so they would have them minus 13.5 in Foxborough.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, remember even last season the Patriots struggled versus the Bills.
This week they wouldn't have covered 13.5 versus a competent team with a healthy quarterback.
Yeah, and next
Titans at Falcons. Ah, man, greatest game of the week.
Titans 10 days to rest. Titans are very helter skelter. I mean, they look absolutely terrible, and then they come out and beat the Patriots by 25. They did last year. So it's in Tennessee.
No, it's in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, I would say Atlanta minus 3.5.
Atlanta minus 5. We're at the Tennessee plus 5 sweet spot. But
okay, no opinion at this point.
Seahawks at Cardinals.
Seahawks always struggle on the road versus the Cards. I mean, even last season, and the Cards were much worse. So I would say Seahawks minus 3.
Seahawks minus 4. Jaguars at Denver. Oh, that's interesting.
Denver minus 2.5.
Denver minus 3.
Yeah, I mean that's gonna be
that's gonna be a good one.
It's gonna be a good one. I think kind of to my comments earlier is
I think it's Denver
a lot. The market's gonna be way down on the Broncos. This team is not that bad. I mean, again, they played competitive ball. going back home.
Well, I think it was tied. I think it was tied going into the fourth quarter. I have to watch these games. I'm just following.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely have to watch
ESPN.
that game too because I didn't watch it that closely either. But this is going to be one of the toughest defense that Gardner Minshew has faced. It's going to be in the altitude.
Mm-hmm. And coming from Florida. Remember that.
Yeah.
It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, no, if this sticks around that 3 number, that could be worth a play.
Well, they're going to do. I mean, it's the juice is on the -3, but
so it's going to probably close 3.5.
We'll probably get it 3.5 in Circa, 4 in Super Contest.
Yeah.
Cowboys at Saints. No
probably
Drew Brees.
Saints -1.5.
Saints +3.
Man.
I think when you think about it, I think that's right with no Drew Brees.
Maybe.
So Monday night, Bengals at Steelers, the two best teams in the AFC North.
Bengals at Steelers. I'll say Steelers -3.5.
-4.5. Interesting.
Giving them a 1.5 of the benefit of the doubt.
I don't know. That's a game that you need a good pulse on both these teams, which I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely need to dig into the Steelers-Niners game for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, the Niners. I mean, the Steelers were on the road, had to cross all the way across country. Niners have a pretty decent defense. I mean, obviously they shut the Bengals down.
Mm-hmm.
They shut the Bucs down on the road. It looks like, for all intents and purposes, they mostly shut down the Steelers, gave up a couple big plays. After that, they played well. So.
And I think, so let's see, lines that aren't up. Bucks at Rams. What do you think it would be?
Probably Rams -5, 5.5, that range.
I think you're being optimistic. I think the books are going to put it -7, and I like the Bucks if that's the case.
Yeah, that could be the case.
Though they are going to cross country.
What about Vikings? Who Vikings play next week?
Vikings play at the Bears.
Ooh.
Definitely not on Kirk Cousins next week.
No,
Just
no.
Gonna establish that right effing now.
No, yeah, I would say. I mean, regardless of how the Bears play, I think it's going to be 3. It's going to be 3.5. I mean, if the Bears look terrible, maybe it goes -2.5. I think it's going to be right in that field goal range because that's what it was last year. Later in the season when the Bears had already demonstrated they were going to be a good team for the year.
Yeah.
This was 3.5, and I think we took Vikings +3.5 last year. We're totally kicking ourselves betting Kirk Cousins in prime time on the road.
And it sucks because every time you do it, you watch the game and
you lose.
You lose, but then you're like, but there's false hope. There's this oh man, if he would have made that one play, they would have covered or maybe won. But he never makes that one play, that's what happens.
He always makes that one wrong play.
And the other one that we don't have a line right now is Redskins at Giants. Daniel Jones going 2-0
at Giants.
Giants are going to be favored.
Redskins will be on a short week. That's going to be close. I think it's going to be -1, -1, -2. It's going to be close.
Man, I hope the Giants are overinflated because I think that's a game. If I can get Skins plus
I don't think it's going to be 3.5.
I don't know.
Like that.
Daniel Jones, New York market, New Jersey's right there. Books are open.
I mean, who knows? We'll have to see. If Saquon Barkley's out.
If Giants lose versus the Bucs, I think you're right. But I'm wondering if, let's say, Bears pummel the Skins. I bet this line is 3. Now, if
you could be right, because last week, in fact, I mean, the Giants with Manning were, it was pick'em versus the Bills, and the Giants were at home.
Yeah, exactly. Daniel Jones looks like what Eli Manning never was.
No, yeah, good point. And yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of Giants homers pounding Danny Dimes. So
Danny Dimes, give me the Skins plus 3.5, please.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So is that it? Any other final thoughts for?
No, I think that's it. I mean,
7-0
we got one
Super Contest Circa.
We got one game left on the slate. Looking at you, Redskins.
Don't love
at
it.
home.
Actually,
plus
I mean,
4.
it's the sharp play in that you're getting 4
Although
points.
I think the line is
It's
like
at 5.
5.5 right now.
Yeah,
So.
honestly, I think it's the people who've been buying up the favorites all week are buying into, because think about it. Are sharps who had a good week being like, give me the Bears on the road minus 4.5?
No.
Like, oh man, I got to put that $400 I just made on that Bears game or whatever. No.
I think we are going to see like a Bears breakout at some point in time here.
Yeah. Could be next
Could
week.
be this game, but yeah, I think it's more likely next week, even though they'd be playing a tough defense. The thing is, the Bears just this went into our handicap, and one of the reasons why we ultimately picked the Redskins was because the Bears, struggle on the road, like a lot of teams do, but especially the Bears. So looking at last year, the Bears went on the road versus the Dolphins, lost straight up. They went on the road versus the Cardinals. Again, like these are not good teams. Beat the Cardinals by 4. Went on the road versus the Niners, who were not nearly as good as they are.
I think they beat the Cardinals by 2. Did they?
By 2. Maybe, yeah, it could be. I know it was within a handful of points and they didn't cover.
Yeah.
And then again, with only a handful of points beating the Niners. So again, they won these games, but a lot of people are kind of projecting that the Bears are not as good as they were last year. I mean, again, it's only week 3, so it's hard to say. But one thing that we've definitely seen is, Mitch Trubisky, obviously under a ton of fire, he just hasn't demonstrated anything to the observable eye that he's matured or progressed in a meaningful way so far in 2019.
Yeah, and I agree.
So that wraps it up.
Great. Thank you guys for listening. Keep following us on Twitter, ZJ Alpha and Non-Random Alpha. If you sign up, you can also follow us in Discord for our aggressive plays, multi-sport aggressive plays. And check us out. We're putting in the work. Watch every game this week to kind of recap, see where we're at. Thanks for listening.
Go Redskins.
Go Skins.